Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Good to see everyone. Will you please call the roll? Please call the roll.
Certainly. Chairman Wyckoff,
I am here.
Commissioner Cloud,
Here.
Commissioner Dillon,
Here.
Commissioner Noble, Commissioner Connolly,
Here.
Commissioner Marr,
Here.
Commissioner LaRue.
Here.
Okay, now is our opportunity for public comment, but seeing that no one is here, I will forego the dissertation that follows. So we will move right into the approval of minutes. I would entertain a motion for the approval of our last meeting's minutes, which was way back before we had to all build an ark in September of 2024. So a motion for approval of those minutes would be great. Thanks.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as read.
I second it.
As presented? Yep, okay. So we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented in a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Dillon,
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner LaRue,
Can I say yes even though I wasn't here, or should I abstain?
did you read them?
No, I didn't, to be honest. So no, I guess I abstain.
Commissioner Cloud? And Chairman Wyckoff.
Yes,
Thank you.
I think I was here. It said so on the
As
paper.
far as I remember.
But I was going to say, even if you aren't here, you can read them and agree that you've read them and they look good to you.
Okay.
Obviously, if someone wants to make a motion that something was said differently, that you wouldn't know that, but you would defer to your fellow board
Gotcha.
members. But yeah, you absolutely can read it and say, yeah, it looks good to me.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. All right, so the minutes were approved. We're moving on to new business, which is, first one is approval of the 2025 Planning Commission schedule. You should have seen that in your package. We've got our meetings set up for each month here, and tells us when the site plan application deadline is, when the agenda needs to be posted, and any agenda packets will be distributed. I'm assuming everybody's probably okay with this at this point. Do you have any major concerns or anxiety over it? Okay. Do we need a motion to approve this agenda or this meeting schedule?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone? Come on, somebody's got to do it.
I make a motion to approve the Planning Commission regular meetings as set forth for this year.
Second.
All right, we're halfway there. Okay, we got it. Thanks. So we have a motion and a second to approve the Planning Commission regular meeting schedule for 2025. Any discussion on the motion, or are we ready for a roll call? All right, call the roll.
Commissioner Dillon,
Yes.
Commissioner Cloud? Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner LaRue,
Yes.
and Chairman Wyckoff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is ordinance 2025-04, planned development.
All right, this will look very similar. It's very similar to the ordinance that came before you in September, which was 2024-18. We did review, internally, we did re-review this area, or this ordinance, and have a few more changes. And those changes are brought to you in your packet, and it's everything that's highlighted in yellow. So we can just kind of go through those. A lot of them are grammatical changes. But we can just quickly go through those. Let's see, so if I don't bring anything up, it was just a grammatical change. So in section 110-386, the last sentence here saying at the PD rezoning phase, the development plan is preliminary and is in the first steps of the development, just showing that this is the first step. Things will become in greater detail the further they go along. On that page, everything else was grammatical. Let's see, we reworded a lot of these titles, like section 110-387, we just reworded that title. We included step backs with the flexibility in setbacks and step backs. If you remember in the Johns Pass Village Activity Center, there are step backs on the upper floors. So we wanted to include that as well. And then that last section there is saying that PDs in Johns Pass Village Activity Center, in the traditional village, commercial core, boardwalk, and low-intensity mixed-use character districts cannot exceed those height limitations in the special area plan. So even if you go with a PD in those character districts, you can't get any higher.
This is specifically precluding any sort of variance from the height restrictions,
Yes.
even with a PD.
Yes.
Okay.
And we thought that that was appropriate in those districts just because we've had so many neighborhood workshops about specifically to the height that we felt like that's not what the community wanted,
Okay.
to really keep those heights at where they are in the special area plan. This was just rewording. Let's see, at the end of page 3 of 11, we added a little bit more to the narrative of why the project is requesting that flexibility from the LDRs and the zoning districts, as well as in the narrative, you must include the impact of neighboring properties and use and development pattern. Okay, going on. This is all pretty standard. I think 110.389 was just rewording things to be a little more clear. Same for here. And then in the neighborhood informational meeting, we included the city clerk and the community development department. We should get a mailed notice as well of the neighborhood meeting, even though we know where it is, but we want to make sure that we get a copy of the mail out. And this is just rewording both of these sentences in section 110.393. A lot of this is just rewording just to be a little bit more clear. I think that, oh, and then changes in development plan, which is near the end of this ordinance. It's section 110-396. We added the intent of the PD rezoning phase that the project is conceptual in nature, so therefore interior layouts may change, as well as egress and ingress, like the front doors may change slightly from the concept plans, and that you don't have to go through a public hearing for those changes. And then also, we didn't have anything in the code saying what is a minor modification, looking at the second paragraph right there, but we had in the code what isn't a minor modification, so we just added that as some examples. Changes in curb cuts, sidewalks, bike paths, anything that creates an increase in parking requirements or trip generation rates, and then complete alterations of architectural style. And that really is it. Most of it, you can see, is just rewording things. But everything that's highlighted, that's what's changed from the last version that you saw. And we did add, there was discussion, I believe at the September meeting, of increasing the sidewalk width. So that was also included in there. Sorry, I think I blew past that one. That was on page 7. Let me go to that. It was section 110-393. 4, a minimum of a 10-foot sidewalk shall be provided on any street. Let's see, the Board of Commissioners can reduce the minimum sidewalk width if there are engineering or environmental limitations making a 10-foot wide sidewalk not feasible. All right, and that is all I have.
All right, who's got questions?
I do. Setbacks. I had talked about this before, and Marcy called me the garbage man because of the garbage things, or the garbage container areas being utilized in the front setback. And I understand it's going on without PDs. I mean, but in a PD, we would see it.
Yes, that has to be indicated on the plan.
But,
And
I mean,
Public
you know,
Works reviews that as
But I'm
well.
thinking, excuse me, that's setting a precedent that if we have non-PDs and they have their garbage area in the setback, it's going beyond where our setbacks are supposed to be. So, I mean, you know, I'm not sure how exactly it can be determined. I mean, but with this, at least we would have a say, you know, like, no, you can't have your garbage in the setback. Where in non-PDs, it can be. So, I mean, you know, I don't know how it can be both ways.
And there are trade-offs with the PD, because, I mean, if you expect, like, something to be to a higher standard like that, then you have to give the developer more benefit to doing that, whether it's more height or if they're doing the alternative temporary lodging use standards, more density and intensity. So it kind of comes down to kind of what battles you want to, because if you're willing to push for more related to, let's say, location of where the dumpster can be, you might have to accept that there might, I mean, there's already more flexibility with the PDs, but that you might have to give something to, because it could complicate how things would be set up on the site, like pushing for that.
Okay, I understand what you're saying in terms of like with this, but once again, I think the setbacks should be setbacks, and you know, you're not supposed to be able to put dumpsters in that area. So with condominiums going in, you have the setbacks, and the garbage dumpster area is in the setback. And as another example, I know we had to review the condo on 134th, I believe it was, because of setbacks, the garbage, the dumpster went, a corner of it went into the setback, and we had to approve it. But other than that, it wouldn't have come before us. So I don't know which way it's going. I mean, you know, I just like, the setbacks are supposedly the setbacks, but exceptions to it. And, you know, it just seems like to me it's just a little too loose. Once again, just my opinion.
I think the setbacks with the dumpsters would be in a different section, although in PDs, you do have to show the location of your dumpsters, as well as like the size, and then Public Works reviews that to make sure that it works and it works with the site. So it definitely is required in the PDs, but otherwise, I think that would be other sections of the code. And eventually, we will amend like the site plan section, and that might be a better place to have that. That it has to also be at the site plan process, showing where the dumpster is, and maybe we could include language on that in that section.
Okay, and I guess that's where I'm trying to figure out where we might be able to impose it. So if anything is put in a setback, it's got to come before us. You know, whether it's, you know, PD or just a condominium that is staying within the initial guidelines. Well, the initial guidelines say that nothing's supposed to be in the setbacks. And that's my point. You know, it's just like, okay, so either they can be in there or they can't be in there. So I'm just kind of trying to start the ball rolling for where that could be that they're not there. Thank you.
I think we have a difference if it's just the dumpster or if it's got an enclosure, right? Is that what we're talking
They all
about?
have to have enclosures.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've got an enclosure, which got into the thing before about how setbacks and structures. A structure at first there for a while was a sidewalk. Well, how can a sidewalk be a structure? There's no walls. But they were saying that you cannot have a sidewalk beside your house because it's in the setback.
But it sounds like to do that, we'd have to modify another part of the code, right? That's not within the PD,
Yes.
because that would reference back to that part of the code. So
That's correct.
I think it's worthy of review at some point, but for this in particular, I don't know if we can really do anything about that with this.
I would say
right?
not in this ordinance,
Yeah.
but it would be further review, and I know we've. talked
Wherever it's
about-
found elsewhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
And where the best place to put that, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but
I'm sure you'll find it.
It is
and
something on our long list of amendments.
Bring it back to us at length, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. good. Okay.
I have a question about 110-396, the minor modifications piece. The way you described it was, what was highlighted was what is not included, but the way it's written is what is included as a minor modification that wouldn't have to be presented. So like the one that sticks out to me is, and correct me if I'm reading it wrong, but the complete alteration of architectural style would be included as a minor modification.
Yes, and then minor modifications has to go to the BOC.
Oh, it does
for-
go to the BOC?
Yes. so
Okay, I had
if
it
it's-
backwards.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so we currently, well, you can kind of see what's underlined. Currently, it just talks about minor modifications and what isn't a minor modification. So then we started talking, well, what is a minor modification? And then what's just a standard operating adjustment? If you want to put in a fence, do you have to go to the BOC for that? That seems kind of ridiculous. So we created this section of standard operating adjustments that, like accessory structures, if you follow the code of what the zoning was prior to zoning it to PD, as well as fences, pools, it's all in there. But we really wanted to include that because we somewhat felt frozen on what you can do with a PD after it goes through the development plan and is constructed. So having those, what's a standard operating adjustment, doesn't have to go to board. And then a minor modification, well, we see what it's not, but what is it? So including that too.
Okay, yeah, I had it backwards in my brain, and
Yeah.
to me, that would be like a major modification, so I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what is, anyway.
I think that came up when the schooner was being discussed. That, the Commissioner Happy, didn't like the looks of it. So they redesigned it, so, and that's where they wanted to see it again, I
Yeah.
believe, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, and I know that there is, whenever a PD comes to Planning Commission as well as BOC, there's a lot of discussion on the architectural style, so we also wanted to make sure we included that if it's a complete change of architectural style, that the community gets a say in that.
We also added reference to some of the design standards and guidelines from the Johns Pass Village Activity Center, to make sure that PDs can't try to get around that, because we don't want someone trying to propose something that looks very modern and out of place within Johns Pass Village. So we kind of try to put as many guardrails as possible because there was a lot of concern from certain community members about that. So we tried to kind of fix those so that they shouldn't be concerns anymore.
Yeah, so if you go the PD route and you're in the Johns Pass Village Activity Center, you still have to adhere to all the design guidelines and standards that are written in the special area plan.
All right, any more questions? Anything else we need to be addressing in this ordinance? Or any motion to approve? Or not?
I'll make a
Motion to
motion.
approve?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, we got a motion? Okay, motion to approve, okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve ordinance 2025-04, plan development, and a second. I think we can go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Cloud? Commissioner LaRue?
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly?
Yes.
Commissioner Dillon?
Yes.
Commissioner Marr?
Yes.
Chairman Wyckoff?
Yes,
Thank you.
motion passes. Thank you, everyone. The next item on our agenda is ordinance 2025-05, temporary shelters on residential property. Please enlighten us.
All right, this is pretty straightforward. So the Florida statute prohibits municipalities from prohibiting one temporary shelter on residential properties after there's a declaration of state of emergency, like RVs. So we are amending our code to basically state exactly what the Florida statute says we can't do. Additionally, we are putting in, there's a few requirements from the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP, so we're including that as well. And we just had to amend that one section, section 94-103. But it's pretty straightforward if you read it.
I had a comment on, or a question maybe. Maybe
Yes.
it's both. In this ordinance, it doesn't talk about the placement of that unit, the temporary shelter, whatever it is. And some of these lots are pretty small. So it occurs to me that it might be wise to state that it needs to be within the property lines and not encumber sidewalks, alleys, roadways, stuff like that. Just an idea.
So the state statute requires it to be on their property. It has to be within their property lines. We can, let's just see. Let's see, 36 months. It's just,
What is the city proposing here?
we're just basically referencing the state statute, because the statute states what we can and cannot do related to it. Because basically we have to allow it, and we just reference their restrictions and what needs to be done. But we can't be more restrictive than the state on this.
And
So-
we also do have, sorry, it's been a while since I've read this. It's section 34-124, and you can definitely not read that. It's very small. Let me see if I can make it larger. Let's see. Oh, great, where'd it go? Thank you, Lisa. This is the parking of any recreational vehicles, trailers, are permitted within 5 feet of the curb edge of a street, except for boat trailers. Recreational vehicles are not permitted to be parked on city street or any non-paved surface of city-owned property between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So the RV is permitted within 5 feet of the curb edge of a street.
That appears to address parking, not using it as a domicile. So it may be wise to still reference back to that still applies,
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
just to close the circle for anybody who's
Yeah.
got,
Yeah.
some of these lots are incredibly small, and you can see them rolling up with a 40-foot RV with the thing sticking out in the road.
Yeah.
Would be wise to have an easy way to get back to. You can't do that.
Should we just add a sentence, must be on private property?
I think must be on private property, and then if we refer back to this section 34-124, that's how we would do it. So then, if you wanted to approve with that recommendation, then we'll make that change.
Okay, so we're going to refer back, we're going to somehow, so we're good with the way it's written with the addition of a reference
yes.
back to section 34-124 of Madeira Beach City Code, right? So we just got to, would be best to try and wordsmith that now or make a motion with an amendment to reference back to that section of code?
You could do either. You could just make the motion with the changes that have been recommended and let staff draft them, knowing that they'll capture it because they're fantastic at scribing what you guys asked them to scribe. Or you can sit here and work on language yourself. And
I'd rather let them do it, if I'm being
I think
honest.
that's a good choice.
I've just spent the last 4 days in Orlando with realtors wordsmithing policy, and I'm done with it right
I
now.
So
think-
you're
I
ready to
think
do it
staff will do
again?
Yeah, yeah.
Staff will do a great job. Just let them know. They've obviously heard the conversation.
And they always do a good job.
Yeah, they do. So just a motion with the amendment as noted.
Okay.
Discussed.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, got any more questions about this? And here I thought this one was going to go, pow, just right through, right? No, we're doing good, we're doing good. All right, so we would need, to help you out here, we would need a motion to approve 2025-05 with an amendment to reference back to section 34-124 of Madeira Beach Municipal Code.
Yes, that's what I said. That's my motion.
Okay. All right, so we have that motion. Anybody got a second?
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2025-05 temporary shelters on residential properties as presented with an amendment to reference back to section 34-124 of Madeira Beach Municipal Code as it relates to fitting entirely on your private property. Any other discussion on the motion? Nicely done, everyone. Have the roll, please.
Commissioner Dillon,
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner LaRue,
Yes.
Commissioner Cloud. Yes. Chairman Wyckoff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And our next item on the agenda is ordinance 2025-06, amendment to the capital improvement element of the comprehensive plan. We'd like to hear what you guys have to say.
Right. This is also pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Every year, we update our comprehensive plan with the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program. So it's just capturing what was approved in the budget and then placing it in the comprehensive plan. And we do this every year. Usually we do it sooner, but since we had the hurricanes, we didn't have any meetings. We're doing it now. And that's it.
So for those of you who are newer, we typically, this is basically a rubber stamp item that we have to approve just to have included for the city's purposes to include in the comprehensive plan. So it's not really for us to go through and say, why are they spending 50 grand on this or 10 grand on this? It's, that work's been done. So I hate to say it that way, but it's kind of, hey, we okay? I mean, it's not anything terrible. We just go forward with it. And if I'm wrong, throw me out. I mean, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I think that's,
Nope,
I mean, that's pretty much where we're at,
100%
right?
right. Yeah.
I had a comment on formatting. I don't know if that's appropriate, but it's difficult to see because it looks like the matrix, the Excel file is completely restructured from year to year. It's hard to see which items slid, which items were eliminated, or which items were combined. I had them spread out all over my bed just to try to figure it out. And it's not easy to figure out what happened from last year where we didn't spend the money and now we're going to paint the firehouse next year, to see that move rather than just show up on a different line item in a different matrix, completely different matrix. And that's something that we need to do this year, I don't think, but for the future, it would just be easier to see how things roll from year to year. I guess my other comment is that the 20 million for capital improvement for 2025 is going to be hard to pull off, given how busy everybody is after Helene.
I'm sure things will
So.
change, yes.
That's the end of my comments.
So the table was based off of what was approved in the budget. I do agree it should be clear for the reasons you stated, but it might be good to do a public comment when they're doing the budget updates, they organize it. Because this was basically me taking what they adopted and putting it in a format so we could put it in our comprehensive plan, but I wasn't able to really change. The only things I was able to clean up some where they kind of explained what the item was, because previously for some, the descriptions were kind of vague. But outside of that, I kind of had to almost more or less copy and paste it outside of clearing up a couple little words here and there. But it would be good to bring that up in like a public comment when they're doing the next budget, to organize it in a way so you can see those items better.
Yeah, I think it's good comment, because it is difficult to see what actually did happen before too, because sometimes that's changed, right? Some items slid from one year to the next, or, there was a overspend here, reallocation there, and you don't really get to see that historical situation. And not for our purposes, because we're not here to redo the whole thing, but just as a resident, I think the residents would like to see where things have gone, maybe. Good stuff. Okay.
I've got a question, though. All the road projects that were set up for this year, after going to the community workshop, they're talking about, or not, it was before that, when they had the discussion about potentially raising the city, raising seawalls, raising streets, and raising properties. I know that had started last year, but I had brought up in the meeting that, District 1, basically all the roads have been improved. Crystal Island had a $10 million project, so you're not going to raise those roads. So the roads that are potentially going to be getting done, shouldn't we put a hold on those as opposed to going through with it if they're looking at raising things? And that's what I don't know. I think we paid a consultant $90,000 to make his recommendations about raising everybody's houses and roads and seawalls. So should we not really look at putting this money into the streets if they're going to be raising them?
You're aware of the last mayor that proposed that quit, right? Just south of here.
Yeah.
Why wasn't everything buried when they
Yeah.
redid all the roads? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with Normandy and Crystal Island.
Yeah.
All those roads have been redone.
Yeah.
So they're not scheduled to get redone for another 10 years.
No, 10, it'll be 20, it'll be 20. Well, but I mean, but I know that Duke was going to do the burying of the lines, but they wanted a 10-foot easement beyond what your easement is for the city. So they wanted straight, clear easement in people's properties. So, and even with that, it was like going to be and this is going into the beginning of the Crystal Island project, that it was going to be $10,000 to $15,000 per household to bury these lines in your yard. I mean, so like it was going way into your properties.
Yeah, I think that discussion would be better suited for BOC, but it is something you could bring up to them in a workshop possibly.
Agreed. Okay. All good points. we always come up with some interesting things here that may or may not be the forum to flesh them all out, but it's stuff that we can bring to the BOC for sure. So back to the matter at hand, our comprehensive plan, capital improvement schedule. Anyone have a motion to? be
One
okay
more
with that?
question.
Yes.
All the items that are struck, those are just removed from the budget, right?
Yes.
So when are those going to come back on? Because some of them were in that 20-year.
Some of them show up
The
in the
stuff's-
new matrix.
Stuff striked out is the table from last year, and we have to cross it out because we're removing it from our comprehensive plan and replacing it with the new one.
So if it's in both, it's going to happen? Am I understanding that right, or?
So everything that has a strike through is getting removed and then replacing it with everything that's underlined.
Some of those things disappeared, some of those things got reallocated to a different year or budget,
Yes.
and it's hard, you can't track it. You can't track it.
But if it's in one budget, but it's struck in the other one, it's still happening? Is that what that means?
Well, anything in the underlying budget that would be added is what the board approved back when they did the
In
budget.
October
So-
or September.
Or, yeah, so that's what's been approved by them. The stuff that's crossed out, that's more of just us because you wouldn't want the old outdated table still in your comprehensive plan if you're replacing it. So it was just literally removing the old table and putting in the new one. So so it's kind of hard because it gets confusing that you see the old table, but that's gonna, so in reality, that would be gone, and then you'd have the new table that has all the items in it.
Okay, I just wanted to
Comp
make sure I
plan.
understood. Okay.
All right. Good enough? Any more questions or a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Attaboy.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-06 CIP in the comprehensive plan.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance as proposed. Can we please call the roll?
Commissioner LaRue?
Yes.
Commissioner Marr?
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly?
Yes.
Commissioner Dillon?
Yes.
Commissioner McLeod? Chairman Wyckoff?
Yes,
Thank you.
that passes. All right, so our next item is ordinance 2025-07, adult use restriction. Let's see where we're going with this.
Yes. Florida statute 787, about 30, sets a minimum age for employment for adult use establishments at 21 years of age, and that was effective January 1st. So therefore, we need to update our code to reflect what was, which was created at the Florida legislature. So that is what we have in ordinance 2025-07. And see on section 110-841, basically has copy paste of what that Florida statute is.
Well, that seems pretty straightforward. When's the last time we had an adult use business in Madeira Beach? Do we know? Anyone?
I do not know. We do not have one.
We have, oh, there have been.
Oh, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, there was one on the corner of 150, where the 7-Eleven is now.
You said we have one
Yeah.
now?
It was called the
No, we
Boudoir
don't.
Lounge for those of
Not
you who've
that
been
I
here
know
forever.
of.
Well, that's what, yeah, we had the gaming place over next to the hippie.
Oh, right. Is that adult use then?
Well, I mean,
don't
it's,
think that's adult-
it's gambling. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple on the beach back in the day. I've been here 40-something years, so it's been a while. Yeah, there was one on the
History
corner
lesson,
there.
too.
Yeah, the Boudoir Lounge. I was like 12, 13 when I rode by on my bike and would always hope the front door would swing open just for fun. Anyway, wow, that's on camera. Never mind. So, yeah, let's strike that from the record. So anyway, seems pretty straightforward to me, and the intent is there. Obviously, this is in, reaction to a lot of the trafficking ordinances that have been put in throughout the state. So obviously, at a very minimum, we should at least go along with what the state has put forward So that's where we are. So need a motion for this, please.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-07.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2025-07 with, for the adult use restriction ordinance changes. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Dillon,
Yes.
Commissioner Cloud, Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner LaRue,
Yes.
and Chairman Wyckoff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Passed, thank you. Okay, so no old business to deal with, so the master plan update, you guys have anything for us?
So last week, we had a workshop for the master plan update that was very well attended. Every seat was packed, which was pretty impressive considering it was our first workshop since the hurricane for it.
I think we had almost 70 people. It was like 68 people, someone
Nice.
counted. So it was great turnout.
So on our website, we have a page for the master plan. And I uploaded the presentation that Kimley Horn did. So wanted to make sure the public has access so they can look through it again. And we also have these nice comment cards they made that if any of you guys fill them out, I'm happy to email it over to them so they can include it in the master plan, because they're still collecting these comment cards and they allow you to write down your feedback. So I'm sure they'd be happy to hear your feedback eventually once they compile all the feedback from the most recent workshops. Eventually we'll be bringing, Kimley Horn will be bringing a draft of the master plan for that you guys will be able to see a draft version sometime in the spring. But just wanted to make sure to remind that the presentation's up there, and you guys are more than welcome to fill out the comment cards. And if you email them to me or Jenny, we can forward it on to Kimley Horn so they can look at it and include it. Any questions or
And we also have a recording of the workshop, or
I should
master
have a
plan
link of
workshop.
that. I should add a link of that to the-
Yes, so we have that as well on, I thought we had it pulled up. Yes, we don't. But if
be
you
on
go
the-
to
on the-
our meetings, I think it would be on here on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, you go to live.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
5 words. You
Sorry about the ad, but you get the,
Good deal.
yeah, Brian, I'll need to add that link too. I didn't realize it was already up. Okay.
Yep, we're right there. Yeah, you can see how packed it was. It was a great turnout. I'm really excited to see what they come back with. All right.
Any questions or anything else?
So now, yes, I do. As I made the comment there, at what point in the master plan is the projects that have already been approved put into place? I mean, because like none of the people at my table had any idea about what was going on at Level Rocks, the Triangle, Schooner Hotel, and those are all plans and projects that have been approved. The people are just like oblivious to it. So in terms of the master plan, that should be included in our, presentations.
Yes, and they are. We've talked to Kimley Horn about all the upcoming projects or all the PDs that have been approved and sent them all of that information. So they're very well aware of those projects.
Another thing Robin had us do fairly recently was we do have on our website, under master plan development, we do have the development agreements for and the concept plans for the PDs. And eventually Schooner will be there when because that one's going to have to come through you guys for a major site plan review of it. But we haven't gotten the version of that yet. So we want to make sure that you guys know that this stuff is publicly available. so the community does know what has been approved previously.
Nice.
And we are putting everything on Laserfish as well, so.
So where is that in the website? I mean, is it the future plans or,
And let me scroll back. It is, let's go back. If you go to Community Development
okay.
Department, and you go to, be under,
okay, oh,
we had it under Master Plan and Plan Development. It is, might need to move it and make it a little neater of an area. I've been trying to fix up the website a little bit, but basically,
well, that's good that it's accessible to them at least for sure. So and once again, like
and the city clerk, as Jenny said, the city clerk is working on, including ordinances and other things. Was it like what's the name of the program again?
Laserfish.
Laserfish, yeah. So that'll be through the city clerk, and that'll have all our planning documents too, including PD. So that
That one will be a great resource. It'll have all of our documents uploaded on there. So she's working on that as we speak.
great, thank you.
All right. And then anything on the C1, C2 zoning you wanted to explain or talk about?
So C1 and C2 zoning district, if you remember, we rezoned everything in Johns Pass Village Activity Center to C1 zoning district. And then we reserved that C2 zoning district that used to be the Boardwalk district. But now it's C1 zoning district. And then within C1, you have the character districts in Johns Pass Village. So Andrew and I, these are the last sections in our code that we're aware of that have that C1 and C2 zoning district references. And so we're just going through the code and updating everything that has to do with C1 and C2. One of them is let's see, we have so many tabs open now. See if I can find it. I think it's that. So one of them will be very straightforward, just changing the C1 and C2. That'll be one ordinance. Another thing that we will need to address is accessory structures. And accessory structures, and that was printed out. Sorry, I thought that was in the packet, and it wasn't. So as you can see, there's C1 and C2, and also in Johns Pass Village Activity Center, we also had quite a bit of R3 zoned properties. I left a map on the dais. So we had C4, C3, R2, R3, C1, and C2, which now is all encompassed in that C1. So we just need to go through, so that table is pretty clean and straightforward, but we also need to address accessory structures and then the alcohol section in the code.
Yeah, so one of the things that we would be doing is continuing the similar alcohol restrictions on the beach side where you'd only be able to do the restaurant use and the majority would have to be from food. So that'd be a continue of kind of what the previous R3 zoning restrictions had based on kind of community feedback and concerns with kind of commercial uses encroaching on residential areas. On the inland side, that's always been commercial. That will have basically the same alcohol stuff it has had currently. I guess we might want on the low-intensity mixed use, we might want to put similar restrictions as we're doing on the beach side because that's close to the residential stuff. And that has restrictions too already that we had in the activity center. So for the most part, it's just kind of making sure we reference those character districts correctly and kind of put in the restrictions on the beach side that the current or the previous R3 zoning had, but continue that.
Okay. Good stuff. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
I don't know if I was supposed to read this ahead of time or not, but as I'm reading it,
Yeah, for sure.
One of the major assets of having a water property is the view, whether you got a boat or not. And so for R1, single-family residence on the water, it talks about an accessory structure, not whether it's an open one as defined on page 1 or an enclosed one. And that's really a big difference for people on the water. If you've got a 3 or 4-sided closed box 12 feet from the water, that's real different than an open one 12 feet from the water. And I can't believe I'm the first one to say that with property on the water, but, you know, an open one next door to me is very different. That's very acceptable. But a cube 12 feet from the water, that's not so good. And we're not distinguishing between what you can do on the water side. I mean, people's backyard, not on the water, that's different, because you don't have people looking through your backyard. So I don't know what the intent was, to provide shade but not obstruct view would be your kind of primary objective for water properties?
There is a,
And to code around that somehow, a little tricky maybe,
Yeah.
but to code around those two things.
we've run into this before here, and I've run into this on a state level with the involvement that I have in the real estate world. And it sounds terrible to say it, but nobody has a right to a view. That's not a property right. So we've had it before here where someone has come in and said, well, you can't build that in front of me. I live across the street from the beach, and it's going to block my view of the beach. And I bought this because it has a view of the beach. And now you're allowing, in one of the buildings, didn't even require a variance for the height or anything. It was just something that was going to block their view, that would fit, conformed. And for some reason, it came to us, and I can't remember why, but it wasn't a height issue. So we had to, you don't have a right to a view. So that's the hard thing to say. Like, I'm buying a piece of property on the water. The only view you have a right to is one directly in front of your property. So we do the dance here on what's right for the person who owns the property and what they can do with that property, and what's right for the person that's next to them and impinges their view, right? So we spent a lot of time on this, right?
Yes.
Figuring out where, setbacks, how far, how big, how tall, how wide, how many square feet. So that's really been fleshed out a lot already, and I see where you're coming from, but we sort of gone down that road before where all of a sudden you can't, I can't build my house now because my guy's not used to seeing my house stick out to my rear setback. So where does that stop, kind of thing? And that's where this all sort of came from. We went through this, year or two ago, year and a half, something like that.
Last year, I think.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah.
And this is what came out of all of that. What's happening here now is just the reassigning of the C1 code. It's not changing anything, it's just reassigning the headlines, right?
Yes, and making
The
sure
titles.
that everybody, if we put everything under C1, it seems to not really change much of what's allowed for the R3. It's very similar. So we'll look at what zones were these properties beforehand, how is that going to change, where are the differences within, there's C4 properties, there's a lot of R3 properties that now everything's in C1, so it's just trying to collect all of those. Are there many differences, what's on the ground right now? Just trying
We're
to
constantly
capture.
balancing, we have people that come here and we're balancing what's right for the property that they're talking about and what's right for the properties around them. And it's really a delicate dance, and it's almost impossible to come up with, because we have small lots. We have, narrow lots. We have, we're not your typical newly developed area, and it's really hard to meet that. It's definitely, if it comes up again, it's something that we could possibly have our planners address, but I don't think right now we've got anything that's really bad, and we haven't seen any issues. We have had some people come for variances, right, to do bigger, and a lot of this was predicated on providing more shade. We talked about that because, higher skin cancer incidences and things like that. So, and after the pandemic, when everybody had to stay home, couldn't go anywhere, so they wanted to be outside in their own yard. So a lot of that's been fleshed through, I think, but maybe there's room for change. I don't know. But it is a good point, but it's a hard dance. It's a hard dance to dance.
Absolutely, it's
Also
a
for
hard dance.
hedges too can go to natural height, so your neighbor might have plant palms or some sort of hedge can go as tall as it can. So that could also obstruct your view to the water.
Well, I mean, the old laws were based on view. The 30-foot setback.
Right.
You can't plant hedges along your back for the view. They were all about view.
Yeah.
But what it did, because it was so hard, you couldn't put any shade in your backyard.
Right,
You'd cook
exactly.
out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a good compromise.
Right.
And what occurs to me is in the definitions, we define the difference between an open and a closed. But in its application, it just says accessory unit, open or closed.
And then it
So
has
somebody was
the
thinking about
size.
view when they defined the difference between an open and a closed one, but didn't apply that difference inside
For the
of the rules.
setbacks.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So perhaps there is some subtle difference in either the size or the setback for an open versus a closed structure.
In an attempt to add what we needed to, which was shade in the backyard, right? That's really the primary reason for these things.
So
It's not living space, right? It's shade space primarily.
if you go
And
to,
in order to do that, but not completely wall out, like you're in Alcatraz, your neighbors, I'm not sure that we may have gone too far and allowed people to put giant boxes in their backyard when that's not the intent of what this whole thing was. People were driving for a variance from the 30-foot setback for shade. That's why they were upset. I can't put shade in my backyard, I can't sit in my backyard, that was it. It wasn't because I didn't have a place for my lawnmower. But if we're not careful, we'll obliterate the advantage of having the view laws that were too restrictive, and overcompensate. That's kind of what I'm thinking that we should continue to consider as variances come in and as permits are done. We could have overstepped, so.
So on page 4, we referenced the sizes that an enclosed accessory structure can be in the R1 zoning district. And then on page 2, for lots of water, we do require rear setback of 12 feet from the seawall, and then it needs to be 7 feet, minimum 7 feet side setback on each side. So we do have restrictions on enclosed accessory structures on the rear of the lot. For an enclosed accessory structure, the maximum size in R1 is 8 feet wide by 10 feet long by 10 feet high. So. I
No,
can't-
yeah, there is the differentiation there in the R1, 2, 3 zones on page 4, right? You can have an enclosed structure up to this size or an open structure up to this size.
And then the side setbacks really came from, we pulled that from the primary structure, the side setbacks for the primary structure on each of those zones.
I think we're
That's
12
what, as I'm reading
one's like a
also, 3 sides, I vehemently kind of remember that I was completely opposed to 3 sides. I said 2 I would sign off on, but 3 sides is a structure. No, so I think this is, not what we signed off on, I believe. We said, they wanted 3 sides, and I said, absolutely not, I would not pass that.
It also went to BOC, so it may have changed at that, because I remember them talking about the sides there and then the percentage, like the 4%. I think it went up from, I think it was like 3 or 3.5, and then it went up to 4. I think Commissioner Kerr.
I don't think you're reading it right. An open accessory structure has 3 or more open sides,
Oh, okay, yes, my bad.
not 3 or more, not 4, not 3 or less enclosed
Yes,
sides.
okay.
Right?
Okay,
Because
yeah,
we're
so
not
it was,
everything's
yes.
a square, right?
Right.
We have cheeky huts that are octagonal or, hexagons or whatever. As long as it has 3 open sides, then it's considered.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why you're sitting at an important seat.
Yeah, it's all good. So I've read things and they didn't make sense to me before either. So anyway, okay. So that's good stuff for our reference. Anything for discussion we have for our folks, nice folks at the city you want to
Yeah.
bring up?
I do.
Okay.
Jenny, on definition, the last thing, it says outdoor kitchens,
Yeah.
okay? Counter space, grills, sink. I know that I voted down for the sink for the simple reason that if you have an outdoor sink, the waste, we went through all this. And I know Chuck and I discussed this with you and Marcy, that we didn't want someone just to throw in a sink and have the water run on top of the ground and into the canal, which is going to stink and bring all kinds of animals and mice and rats and what have you. I see that's in here now.
I remember this discussion, and it was referenced somewhere else in the code that they could not have any kind of open drain in an outdoor structure.
The sink, I don't mind the sink being there, but it's got to be defined
There it is.
that it's hooked up to the city sewer and inspected.
There it is.
I'm
It's
not
there,
against
right there.
it,
Says it
but
must
I'm
be
against-
connected to a sewer line with an inline isolation valve. Plumbing lines must have a backflow prevention.
Yep, it's there. That's where we went around with this last time.
Yeah.
And we had to find the cross-reference in the code,
Yeah.
section 110. It does have to have electrical isolation, which means
Correct.
a separate branch circuit, right? And then the plumbing
Okay.
lines have to have backflow prevention and proper sewer connections.
all right,
Got it.
yep.
So maybe
Winner.
would it be worth putting like an asterisk there? You know, so any
It's all in the
asterisks-
same section. Sorry, I don't think I printed out the entire accessory structures
It's-
section.
It's
Okay.
10 sections down from this.
Yes.
It's in the same section.
in the
That's one.
same,
That's
like,
110-482.
division, yeah.
This is 110-472.
It's
So it'll be in
all-
the same section of the code.
We only
Where it says
print-
outdoor kitchens may have, and then down it tells you what you can and can't do in an outdoor kitchen.
Yeah, we only printed stuff that referenced the C1 and C2
Yeah.
Zoning districts. so-
Sorry, I was just trying to show the C1 and C2 where they were. But that section with outdoor kitchens, that
didn't
is
see
just
that.
like what Mike was saying.
Okay?
It's in that division.
I got something for you. The town center activity zone, there is a provision in the code about townhomes, about floor area ratio and lot size. It doesn't make any sense. There is a minimum lot size requirement and a floor area ratio that will absolutely not work for any townhome type construction. Maybe we can look at that.
We have that on our list of one
All right, cool.
of the, one of the
'Cause
next
yeah,
few
it
things.
just doesn't make, you have floor area ratio of 0.5 or something for a townhome and it's not.
Yeah, we
doesn't
haven't,
work.
I don't think the townhome section has been updated since '83.
Okay.
So that's definitely on one of our next, after we address all the C1, C2s.
Okay.
We have townhomes, also we'll be bringing, probably be a little bit later because it's a lot more research, but the site plans and levels of review, that hasn't been looked at for a little bit too. So there's a few sections in the site plan
Okay.
section that we want to update. So you'll see that too, but townhomes
And
is
food for thought
definitely
on that same
our
section.
list.
There's prohibition against any townhome building that is less than 3 units attached. May want to consider, because we have a lot of small places out here, and in order to fit some in, you may have to have 2 instead of 3.
Makes sense.
Yeah, one thing that we've wanted to look at is there's a lot of, like with the R2 zoning district, there's a lot of smaller multifamily uses that we don't really we don't have it set up right to do them, like with the townhomes, or we don't even reference fourplex, for example, even though that if you had, like, let's say 12,000 square foot lot, you could do you'd have the density for it, but we don't even really properly.
I'm only talking about the special activity center.
Oh, it's special, down, there too, we don't reference it either.
Yeah, because, I had a specific issue, and I can tell you about later, but we were trying to someone was trying to put a site plan in, and it got crushed because of the floor area ratio for townhomes minimum lot size for townhomes and the fact that you can only have a minimum of 3 in a single building for townhomes in the special area, special activities, or the activity zone. You know what I'm talking about. So you may want to massage that, and I'm happy to come in and talk to you about how it went
Okay.
and what maybe works better.
Yeah,
Okay?
that would be great.
Cool, from a development standpoint. Which would then actually give, in some cases, more open space. Okay, cool. Anything else? Any other discussion? All right, our next meeting scheduled for Monday, March the 3rd, 6 PM, right here. I don't see any other informational materials that were handed out for our benefit. Oh, do I? Anything you need to do with this Forward Pinellas deal, Andrew?
Oh, that actually, we received that after the agenda packet was put together.
Yep.
So any amendments to our code, we send to Fort Pinellas, they review to see if it's in compliance, everything was fine. So that's what that paper is.
Okay. All right, looks like we're done. Thank you, meeting adjourned.